I
speaker,
usually
maybe?
hear people call them pods, not disease bubbles. That's
Disease bubble. That's the phraseology I've chosen.
that's that sounds a little more
Uh,
ominous.
pods. What are we, whales?
What's crack-a-lackin'?
Ugh,
Have you always had a little bit of gray
exhausted.
hair, or is that new?
No, it's coming in now.
Dang.
Yeah, it's
It's
killing me.
it's
See all
coming
this?
in.
See all that?
Dude, it
I
looks
know.
sexy though.
Oh, hey, I'll take that because it
Yeah,
doesn't
dude.
feel sexy. It
It
feels like I'm old AF.
it
That's what it feels
dude, it
like.
looks freaking hot, man. I like it.
I love the change of venue for you. Is it
Do you?
yeah.
It got too freaking cold in
No
the old
way.
yeah, it got too cold. My whole plan the whole time was to get a space heater,
Yeah.
um and cuz the AC was working like a charm. Um and then so I get a space heater, my wife's like that's super dangerous. She's like it has to be 3 feet
It's
away
true.
from everything, can't be plugged into a uh, extension cord. And then I like looked up some YouTube videos. I saw a bunch of news coverage of like space heater fires, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's
Yeah,
not
probably don't
do
do that.
this. So then I literally like tried using blankets one day, dude. It was like 35 degrees, and I was
You're,
blanketed
like,
up.
wrapped up in, like, one
Yeah,
of those, like, space blanket things, like the foil
dude,
that they wrap, like, the
yeah,
marathon runners in afterward.
I
That's
was
freaking
this
funny.
close to buying a Snuggly, and then I was like, I gotta know my limits. Bring it back
My
into the
guy's all
house.
snugged out. He's getting all snugged out.
But it's nice to live like a normal human being, like inside of a regular, like, you know, building with like insulation and like all that kind of stuff. It is nice. I've missed it.
Ah, yeah, well, it
Should we
and you're looking great, dude. My gosh.
thanks, man. Wow.
What is with you?
You
You
got
you look like the best you've ever looked. I'm not even
thanks,
kidding.
dude.
It's
Well,
true.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to freaking eat less and, lift the weights,
Eat less,
man.
move more. That's it. This is like
Yeah,
there's no trick.
that's it, man.
Here, I wanted to show you this. I have a picture of us that is a total throwback that you would appreciate,
Is
I
it the
think.
one at is it the one where we're sitting together? Where we're sitting at I want to do like a how it started, how it's going version with us with that two picture of
Oh
us and
yeah,
we're
well,
like
how it started. This is
super
our very
chubbed
first
out.
picture together. Here, I'll show you.
Holy
Is
cow.
Can you see this?
Oh shoot. Oh god. So fat. The fatness. Oh,
It's not good.
it's not good. It's not it
There are better pictures for your first picture, but unfortunately, we don't have them.
this just so happened to be the first one.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That's well, what are
We
you
don't
gonna
have a
do?
lot to choose from. There's this one.
We have a lot. That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, that's the one. I
That's one.
think yeah, I think we got to post the how it started, how it's going with that one.
Yeah, and then
Um,
there's. I think this is the last picture of us together.
wow. Really?
We need better
No, we
pictures.
got it.
I
Yeah,
think
we got
so.
it.
That's.
I'll
Oh no, that's old. Hold on. No, that's old.
yeah, no, that's
Maybe
not
this one.
possible. Getting there. I look like
Maybe like this one.
in that
Um,
one with the mustache, I looked like a convicted like killer or something like that out of like
you're like a. It's yeah.
Tennessee or
Yeah,
something
that
like
that
that.
is the picture of a person who, is out on bail awaiting sentencing.
Yeah.
That's
Like just got off of bail and
totally.
is trying to stay under the radar. Well, you know what? I feel like we should have already started. So how about we just make all that
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, let's make all that the
That's
podcast.
part of it.
That's all part of
Hmm.
it. Yeah, that was all baked in.
How it started, how it's going.
Phillip
It's dangerous.
Jackson 2020, all we have left is decaf. You know
It's
that you know
the scary. That was my campaign slogan
that was it.
from one of those viral tweets. Literally a phrase that I spoke. I actually said that out loud.
Right.
Is that one day I went to the Nespresso cupboard and there was nothing left but decaf, and I thought that like perfectly summed up the way that I was feeling at the beginning of that week.
Right.
This is going to be a very long week.
Right.
What
How are
was yours?
you
Did you do that
Mine
thing?
was I did. Oh gosh. Oh god, what was it? What was it? I can't remember. And I sort of cheated. It wasn't literally the last thing I said. It was like the thing that sounded better to me, but
Uh,
I can't at all remember it. But like,
that's funny.
how are you feeling overall right now? Like it's obviously a bit of a crazy time, COVID, elections. Are you managing to stay sane? If so, how? If not, what's your GoFundMe so that, people can
Uh, uh, so it's funny. Right now, I mean, just to touch on both of those things, Florida is a very interesting place to live.
Florida's
The
an interesting
COVID,
place. Yeah.
it really is. COVID, the last 2 months in particular has been a sort of an unmitigated disaster in the state that's just kind of been just having a family of mine that works in healthcare and having a few of my very close family members, including my sister, who run uh, like nursing at a big hospital in Central Florida, a big network of hospitals in Central Florida, and kind of seeing the struggle that they go through, and watching it sort of make its way around the community, and having people that get it, and people that go to ICU, and
Mm,
they were fairly careful, and some people, it's funny to kind of watch it hit so close to home after seeing it sort of from afar for the last 6 months.
mhm.
But thankfully, like, we have our health, we're doing okay.
That's cool.
It hasn't really hit close to home here. I did my very first travel since the month of March. Since March 7th or so, I've been
Mhm.
grounded and haven't really left Florida at all. But I did travel out to Seattle a few weeks ago to see Brian, who is on the Future Commerce podcast with me, and
Shout out to Brian.
that was a weird and harrowing experience. I was one of 15 people on the plane on the
Oh,
way out
really?
there. There was like nobody on the plane. I had four, rows in front of me and behind me that was like
Oh,
all to
wow.
myself.
Yeah.
Um, and but and then I got back and I had a COVID test, and just to be safe and
Mhm.
stuff. I feel like that's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, but that's kind of the world that we live in right now. It has made me think on a grander scale about like this idea that things have, there are repercussions, or there are consequences to everything.
Mhm.
Everything you do has adverse effects that you can't possibly uh, take into consideration when you make a choice. It's sort of like reaffirming to me that you just have to live your life
Mhm.
instead of yeah, like we all are faced right now with having to just kind of like live our lives.
Mhm.
And there's risks that you take, and the risks, and some risks are worth the risk and some aren't. And
Yeah.
I think that's a little different for everybody. I'm
Yeah.
much more pragmatic now than I was, say, 6 months ago.
Okay.
um
So
yeah,
more
that's
like
that is that an answer you were hoping to
lit
get
I
from me?
mean, yeah, think this is as close as you can get, like, because I know you were pretty, like, locked down before, like, not going anywhere kind of a thing, so you kinda opened up a little bit and decided to get out, do a little
Yeah,
travel.
I think also just seeing that we're um having more understanding, I think, of I don't know, the measures that seem to work. You look at what happened with the NBA bubble, right? They played 173 games or something and had zero infections, and it just proves that if you do certain things, that you can prevent the disease from touching you and your family, if you do most of the things that you're supposed to do right: social distancing, testing, wearing a mask,
Mhm. Mhm.
and just being really on top of that stuff. And we still have people like, I have a disease bubble. I have I have people that I feel safe because I like feel safe being around, and have my kids be around their kids, like,
Mhm.
because I know them and they're the people that I have group texts with, and we share similar ideals. And then there's the everyone else that I don't know that I feel safe
Yeah.
hanging out in large
I
numbers
I
with those
I
people.
usually hear people call them pods, not disease bubbles. That's
Disease bubble. That's the phraseology I've chosen.
that's that sounds a little more
uh,
ominous.
Pods. What are we, whales? We just hang around in pods.
Hanging around pods. Yeah, we
Disease
found
bubble is like the precise term of art, because it describes exactly
right,
what it
right.
is.
You wanna
Yeah.
be specific. You wanna be specific about these things. Yeah, we found out that, we had some friends that we found out they were in a pod together and we were not in the pod. We found this out
Oh,
a few months. Yeah. So now I just talk about it on podcasts.
that's what that's your ultimate like retribution
Yeah, that
for
nobody's
being on
ever
the
gonna watch.
outside. Is like I'm
Yeah.
just going to talk about you sort of subversively in
Yeah.
public for thousands of people
Yeah, yeah.
to witness,
Tens to hundreds. But
tens to hundreds.
so what did you do in Seattle? You guys do a little future commerce brainstorming or?
Little bit, yeah. We just kind of figuring out what next year is going to be like. We had an incredible 2020, despite all the odds. Launched a bunch of new properties and just kind of, you know, planning world domination for next year, and got
Mhm,
some really cool irons in the fire. So that was part of it. The other part was I'm just itching. You know, I spent the last 5 6 years being on the road 40 plus weeks a year.
mhm,
I didn't realize how much of, you know, how much energy that gives me in sort of meeting other people and seeing other people and visiting
mhm.
new places. And so, you know, part of it was a convenient uh, you know, need to get out of the house for a few days.
Yeah.
Hiked an amazing mountain in the
Oh,
Snoqualmie Valley called Mount Catherine, which is a very easy, you know, couple hour hike up and back.
okay.
Um, but yeah, Brian and I got to do that. That's cool. It's something you don't do in Florida. You know,
Right,
our highest point of elevations 160 foot, and it's at the top of a garbage dump
right.
in Palm Beach County. So
Closest thing to a hike is going to Disney World or something like that and
it
hiking up
is
there.
like, and it's, you know, it's all flat, and then you eat a ton of like, you know, Dole Whip and Mickey Mouse shaped ice cream while you're there. It's, you know, you don't have the same kind of opportunities. A lot of mushrooms on this mountain, though. If we wanted to do the
Nice.
psychedelics thing,
Yeah, we gotta talk about
that
that.
would have been that would have been a whole different type of trip. Although I think psychedelic tourism is something that I think might be top of mind for you because I saw you tweeting about it. But you know, that could
Yeah.
operate be a different kind of a trip
A
in
different
the
kind of a trip.
future.
Yeah.
Totally different kind of a trip.
Yeah, no, it's I've just I don't know, I've heard about it, like, on the Tim Ferriss, show, he's started to invest heavily in psychedelic therapeutics and has talked about how it's benefited him and just lots of different, interesting things related to it, so it's just something that I've been kinda
Well,
curious
there was
about.
the ballot measure that went through, I think, in Oregon, where they
Mhm,
decriminalized possession of all
mhm.
uh, drugs, but uh, I think it was psilocybin and some other psychoactives. They actually like
Fully legalized, I
completely,
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
legalized, which
yeah.
is super. I mean, of course, it's Oregon, but in the future, that might be something. It's really interesting to think about. Think about this, because this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, which is the the concept of you look back on human history even 40 or 50 years ago, and you think about, you know, or let's go further back. Let's go back 300 400 years,
Okay.
and bloodletting was extremely common,
Right.
and that was like a form of, you know, it was a form of therapy. It was a form of uh, you know, medical practice, and it had various forms from, you know, cutting
It
to
was the
leeches and that sort
CBD
of
of their
thing.
time,
It was
basically.
extremely well accepted as like a therapeutic that worked. We were watching this incredible series from the BBC that talks about like the life of Victorian the Victorian uh, England,
Mhm.
or the time in
That
Victorian
era, the
England,
Victorian era, yeah,
in
yeah.
that era, and there was this incredible explosion of like consumer brands in that time, and it's uh, where you had all of these like therapeutics and, you know, different remedies and that people would take in. And one popular thing was to go to like the spa or go to the ocean and take in the waters. And
Mm.
so you would leave, you know, your Victorian home, and you would go to the spa, and you're like, oh man, I feel so much better when I go here. And they take in the waters. It's like a thing that they would do. And they had magical properties that would just impart wellness to you. And then you go back home, and, you know, a couple months later, you're feeling like garbage again. Then you go again, you go to the spa and you take in the waters and you feel amazing. And it turns out the reason that people felt so good was because they were leaving their arsenic filled homes where they were slowly being poisoned to death
God.
by things like wallpaper and lead paint and things like that. And
Right.
they would leave, and they'd leave the environmental toxins and go to literally anywhere, but it happened to be the spot, and then they get better.
That's so
And I
funny.
feel like if you kind of look at human history every 30, 40, 50 years, we tend to believe that we're our greatest fallacy is believing that we are fundamentally and wholly completely right now, and that the humanity of 40, 50 years ago were complete idiots and basically Neanderthal.
Right.
And so I think about that a lot. It keeps me up at night as to like, what are we wrong about right now, which is
Mm.
probably everything.
Mhm.
And the things that we take to be like gospel truth, and confirmed science, and science, factual science that is uh, completely indisputable. Yeah, how much of that's going to hold
Yeah,
true in
because
40 years? I'm not sure.
like that's like the history of science is
Of course.
things that were held to be incontrovertibly true. People saying this is actually not true, and then everybody saying you're crazy, you're a heretic, or you're a whatever. And then ultimately, like the scientific method, reproducible studies is kind of the only way to figure out what's what.
I have a thought that I wanted to float over to you. I want to get your take on something. It's something that it's like a nugget. It's not fully developed yet, but it's something I've been chewing on.
Okay.
I have this idea, that there's kind of this inverted bell curve of like focus and attention that you go through over the course of your career. And I know that you're big in helping people sort of develop their careers.
Hmm.
And when you're early on in your career, the amount of focus and attention that you give to like uh, what sets you apart and what helps you be successful and maybe land that first big job is being extremely diversified. Extremely diversified. Think about when you do your college application. It's like they want to see that you speak multiple languages, that you've been to many
Hmm.
places, that you've
Hmm.
that you've done nonprofit work, and that you volunteered your time, and that like they want you to be involved in sports, and they want you to have done well in
Hmm.
not just one area or major like class work. They want to see that you're proficient in all of them. That's like what
Hmm.
makes you really well rounded, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And then you get that first job, and then you kind of get pigeonholed in your career to doing one thing. And if you were to like veer off of that path for some period of time, like you're probably not going to hit an acceleration point in your career early on that will like take you to the next level. But
Hmm.
it's funny because there's this weird dip at some point where like your diversification of your skill set and capabilities, and maybe you're bringing your whole self to work, is totally discouraged. It's like you have to be solely focused and specialized on one thing for a long period of time. But as your career goes on, it's like the more desirable people to take on larger roles and to lead larger efforts are the ones who are more generalists. They're people who have extremely diversified interests. They're people who are on nonprofit boards. They're people who are on who have lots of investments, and they have rental properties. And these are like
Hmm.
they've got families. They're things that are fragmenting their time, that are trying to pull their attention away. But that's the
Hmm.
person who is successful. So you kind of take them as they are, and they're going to be successful no matter what they do, because they know how to sort of time box their attention to create high yield for the small amount of investment they give.
Hmm.
And that's this nugget that I'm like sort of chewing on, which is like, how do we cut out that middle section to learn to like embrace the fact that modern work is like a lot of different things. Is like, how do we close the gap there, that
Hmm.
this idea of specialization in the middle years is
Hmm.
actually not really necessary? In reality, it's kind of a fallacy. It's this thing that we've kind of crammed juniors and seniors into, in junior and senior roles, especially in
Hmm.
technical work,
Hmm.
of like, how do we hopscotch that piece to get into the later years where you're back to being your full self and letting it all kind of hang out. And it's a nugget. I'm chewing on it. I'm
That's
curious what you think
interesting.
about that.
Yeah, like as I'm hearing that, I'm not even sure what I think about it because I'm thinking about your career trajectory and mine, which both
Yeah.
follow that path
Hmm.
of specializing and then being more generalist. And then, so I'm seeing the pattern there, but then I'm also thinking like I've always felt like specialization is so powerful. And so I'm thinking about like if somebody's a developer and they can specialize, there's so much power in that. But there's also so much power in being able to generalize. Like, okay, you can code really well, but can you communicate well? Um, can you communicate with clients? Can you communicate in writing? I think about like the base camp philosophy where they're like so into writing, even for designers, creatives, technical roles. Like writing is such an important part of their um, philosophy of like how to do work. And I think about like as work is becoming more asynchronous, like writing is becoming more important. Also, stuff like this, like there's more people doing like YouTube videos. You know, like I was talking to Phillip Rakowski, the View Storefront CTO, and he's starting to do YouTube videos. A lot of people that would speak at conferences are starting to do YouTube videos because there's not as much conference speaking going on. And so, like, that's a very different skill set from like coding, you know? But then, like, what you're saying is like, okay, so maybe this whole specialization thing in the middle doesn't actually matter. Like, we're forced, like, it's somehow being forced and it shouldn't be. Um, I don't know. My instinct is that's not true. Like you have to put in the 10,000 hours. You have to get deep inside. I'm also thinking about it. I was listening to this Webb Smith podcast over the weekend, and he talks about deep generalization, um, which I honestly didn't fully understand the concept. I heard them talk about it a little bit, but he talked about having three or four or five areas that you knew well. Like he talked about how commercial real estate, retail, brands, and a
Hmm.
couple other things in his particular case. But that phrase, deep generalization, like really stuck with me. And I think there's something there. Um, it also makes me think about, I've heard people say, like, instead of trying to be the top 1% at like one skill, try to be the top 10% of like three skills combined.
Hmm.
And that's going to, be uniquely valuable, you know?
Yeah, it's this really interesting thing. So think about the ultra successful. I mean, depending on how you quantify success, let's put that to the side for a second. But the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos of the world, those people have extreme fragmentation of their interests and times and investments, right? The Elon Musk, you have not boring company, or I'm sorry, the boring
Boring
company,
company.
not boring is Packy McCormick. The boring company. You have, well, Amazon.com is obvious for Bezos. Was it Washington Post? Blue Origin. There's an incredible amount of diversification, not just in like portfolio and investments,
Mm-hmm.
but interests, right? And the
Mm,
things that
mm-hmm.
he has the financial freedom to be able to pursue whatever interest matters to him. And I think there's a lot of that at the upper end of the financial success curve. So
Mm-hmm.
my sense is that the things that make you extremely successful is actually being more diversified and being more um, having giving your attention to a lot of things, and the people that are truly stand out are the ones who understand how to make them all work together into like a web that is self-reinforcing. The work that I do in the nonprofit space with 1909 and my advisory work with as I'm a board member at 1909, which is a startup accelerator program and operates a space for creatives to work in collaboratively here in West Palm Beach. That informs the way that I do business networking, which has a direct impact and direct benefit to future commerce and something digital. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that I do has an interconnected path to being a value add for the other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that we don't teach enough of. It's the thing that qualifies us to get into higher education for some reason, but it's not the thing that we actually spend time teaching people how to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all poorer for that, because think about what the future of work would look like and the future of education would look like if we
Right.
taught people how to make networks work together for the benefit of each other and building
Right.
mutual value. And if
Right.
we did that instead of teaching people how to be specialists for 10 years of their career,
Right.
and to like pigeonhole themselves, then I think that we might actually have like transformational work and transformational like meaningful, a more meaningful existence for people who are doing
Right.
work, especially in technical fields.
I like that a lot. I think the fundamental thing is that like people crave variety, right? Variety is the spice of life. So to the
Hmm.
extent that you can do different things, you're going to gravitate towards doing different things. You're going to have different. Nobody has one interest that they want to do 16 hours a day. Maybe there's very, very few rare people that want to do the same thing for 16 hours a day. Um, but so like even like Elon Musk, he has these things he's incredibly devoted to, but yet he'll be doing cars and doing rocket ships and tunnels. And it's like you get interested in something, and to the extent that you have the bandwidth to kind of chase that, that's something people are going to gravitate towards. I think about like my daughter, like we're homeschooling her. I'm looking at her interests develop. And like, I would have loved for her to be into coding. I tried to teach her that. It didn't really click, but she
Right.
loves to draw. And I'm like, oh man, maybe she could be like an illustrator. That's like a great career, like a digital artist. So then I'm kind of pushing her a little bit in that direction. She loves history. I hated history. Like, she loves so there's this like constellation of things she's interested in. And I think the other interesting thing is that like in the example of schools wanting you to be well-rounded, I think they want too much well-roundedness, right? They want you to have well-roundedness across 15 different categories, math, volunteering, da, 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 whereas I think maybe like 3 to 5 is like the number, like 3 to 5, like really core interests that, like you said, bounce off of
Hmm.
each other and kind of feed into each other and stuff like that. Um,
I think they do reinforce each other. I think I could go down the rabbit hole of ways that I feel like I could have probably done better with more support, especially in the education front when I was a kid. I would say that as time wears on, there's more access to more information and a greater access for people to be able to pursue their passions
mhm,
now than there has ever been, and and sort of the lack of reliance on place is
mhm,
a thing that is unique to this generation, right?
mhm,
The idea of place is becoming less and less concrete. Like school is not a place you have to go to, right? School is a thing that you can do, but it's not a place you have to be.
mhm.
Uh, Restaurants is not a place you have to be; they can come to you. Um, and in fact, any kind of experience. I mean, let's look forward a little bit into the future, and you see what is happening around AR and VR. I think the idea of place, or even with the existing technology, I know that that freaks people out when we talk about stuff like that. So let me kind of come back to business meetings happen to take place now sometimes in Fortnite. Like people are
Really?
meeting in, yes, this is a thing that's happening.
That's
Um,
wild.
in fact, there's a oh, who is doing it? There's a retail trade group that is holding. I'm gonna have to source this after we talk, so that you can throw it into like a chat or something somewhere. There's someone is doing, and it's not Shop Talk. Someone is doing a virtualized version of like a industry event, but it's all taking place in like Fortnite.
Oh,
And
that sounds somewhat familiar. Um,
what's so interesting about that is the like reliance on place, and the idea of a workplace has been on the decline for a long time anyway. um this idea of like the reliance on place is, I think, core to our ability to sort of evolve our understanding of who we are as people, is that because we're not bound to place anymore. Like it used to be, you go to an Ivy League school and you have the Ivy League experience, or that was core to our identity, and it was more bound to place than I think we understood. um, Another nugget of that idea, I think, is that dedicating to be in a certain position in space or place was part of the our struggle to have this idea of like a more fuller identity, that have like lots of diverse interests, and to be able to like split time to you know give portions of our attention to all of those things all at once, because It required for us to be physically in places.
Mhm.
And that's not the world that we live in. It's not the world that my
Right.
daughters or your kids will live in the
Right.
future. And so this
Right.
idea that you can inspire them to be an illustrator and then they don't have to go to RISD, or they don't have to go to a college like Pratt, like
Mhm.
they don't have to go to those places to be able to
Right.
fulfill that part of their passion,
Right.
is going to be different for this generation than any generation before. You have another exact shirt,
Almost
the
exactly the
same
same, right?
shirt.
It's impressive,
It's
right?
shocking. It's very impressive.
Um,
Gosh, I need to get on that game. I was trying to build out a capsule wardrobe earlier this year, and then I sort of had this, like, I love this idea because I started this in December um, of 2019, which was like just have the basics in black, just
okay.
t-shirt, black long pants, black shoes, and
Yeah.
just kind of like take out the choice of getting
Right.
dressed in the morning. I kind of
Right.
love that idea. But I'm looking at this huge wardrobe that I have that I just rebought in the last 3 years because I've lost a lot of weight. And I'm
Right.
like, so I'm going to throw all this out so that I can
It's hard to do, right?
save
Yeah.
20 seconds a day.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. Like,
yeah.
yeah. And I'm going to spend an additional, what, 3 grand or something stupid on more
Yeah,
clothes.
yeah.
It sounded like a really dumb idea
I
when I
watched
started
this
thinking about it.
I watched this whole entire YouTube video, by this guy with, like, a minimalist YouTube channel, and that was his thing. It was like, I wore the same T-shirt for a year, and it's just like this charcoal gray T-shirt, and he, just talked about the whole minimalism approach and stuff like that, and, I was like, "I kinda wanna do that," but,
We don't talk enough about that. I like intellectual, or like the sort of like minimalism aspect of the uh of that from like a time like a attention focus,
uh-huh.
like minimalism on like having to make those sorts of choices. Like, Obama is the clear example of this sort of idea of, having a basic wardrobe to kind of like minimize cognitive load so that you can
Mhm.
focus your attention on things that actually matter.
Totally.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I fully buy into those things, but I love the idea of it and I really want to do it.
Really?
Except it just requires a tremendous amount of investment and sort of like almost this wasteful thing of like, I got to get rid of all the stuff I already
Right.
have, which is
I
kind of
It's funny because I think of you as, like, the opposite of a minimalist. Like, you're super into fashion,
maximalist. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, you're into, like, shoes and stuff like that, and, like, that's funny. I didn't I'm surprised that you're at all even interested in, like, minimalism, you know?
Well, I think part of it is like freeing up cognitive load so I can do more things. it's not about it's not about the pursuit of minimalism for the sake. It's so that I can actually create more
Dude,
bandwidth so I can do even more,
you
which
know
is crazy.
That'd be crazy if, like, you wore, like, the same shirt and pants every day, right? And then the only thing that changed was your sneakers. Like, it would almost
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, it would be like a flavor of minimalism, but it would almost put more emphasis on your shoes because, like, everybody would be like, "What shoes you wear today?" You know?
My dude, yeah. I've recently gotten into all the secret sneaker trader like Discord groups now.
That's wild.
It took a couple years to break in, and so now I'm in the
You're,
like
like,
group buy
deep into
brick
this
flip.
world. Like, you're heavy
It's
into this world.
I don't want to be. It just now I don't want to give that up. I'm
Right,
like, do you know how long it took me to break into those like clubs?
right, right.
Um, and it's crazy, man. I mean, yeah, what yet another thing to focus time and attention on.
But you've been kinda like you've been it sounds like you've been, like, hacking and optimizing, like, your schedule and, like, like,
Oh yeah, big time.
all that stuff, right?
Well, I found too that there's stuff you can do. Like there's stuff that only Kaylin can do, right? But the things that Kaylin thinks that only Kaylin can do is probably like 1%. Like there's a small sliver of things that only you physically could ever do.
Right.
And then there's all the other stuff that you're just not willing to let go of yet.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm
Uh,
slowly figuring out what those things are that
yeah,
I can allow other people the space to be able to take ownership of, and that's been a big part of growing future commerce, which is like what do I have to get in and actually do, and what am I just micromanaging and preventing
mhm,
other people from skilling up on, and sort of letting go of control of
right.
those things for other people and make space for other people to be
Right.
able to perform. So,
What are some of those things that you thought you couldn't do, and then you got over that hump of being able to hand them off, and like what was that
ugh,
process like of
I
kind of
mean,
negotiating that?
writing is a big part of that. So, I think like part of my micro management is me wanting us to communicate all the ideas I have, and like in the various places where we're doing writing. So in the last 18 months, we've done 5 or 6 like industry reports that are like very market research based. And in my mind, the best takeaways and the best insights are the ones I come up with, and then there's everybody else's on the teams that are not. And that's in actuality the things that connect the deepest with people that have legs that stick around for a long, long time. Like it's very rarely a concept like Carly, or like a psychographic of a consumer who has very little money but buys premium anyway. We called her Carly, and it's an acronym that stands for Can't Afford Real Life Yet. That's one concept I came up with at one point that made a splash. But Brian has written article after article after article after article about like the concept of art and its intrinsic value and extrinsic value, and how like people feel connected to an artist even if it's not the genuine artifact, if it's just a print or a replica, and how replica sneakers like make that up too. And he talks about dadaism and like sort of this idea of absurdity. He talks about existentialism and maximalism and like all these high order concepts and then things that I just don't care about, that I'm like, no, we should be talking about this other thing. Well, that's the thing that connects with people. So it's me kind of trying to figure out like this understanding of like there's no one us focusing only on the things that I care about really makes us very narrow, and me giving greater platform and voice to other people's ideas makes us better as a whole in
Mhm.
producing better content that connects with more people. That's one small
Yeah,
example.
that seems like a
um,
tough one. You guys are getting real deep into topics and
I
stuff. Like
know
you guys
it's
go.
crazy.
Yeah, I saw some of your posts about some of the, consumer reports that you guys have been, jumping into with, like, cycling gear and, like, the
Yeah,
global bread flour market and, like, how you were saying, like, there's just a report for everything. It's pretty interesting.
there is. That's probably an area for disruption if I'm kind of, broadcasting where I think the business might be able to go. There's two. Let me kind of like dream out loud for a second here. There are major trade industry groups in the world of retail that are basically unchallenged. Um, Internet retailer, which is now called eMarketer, is one of them. It's been around for 30, 40 years, maybe longer. It's been around for ages, and has had through like many inceptions, and internet retailer being like one of the more modern versions of it. But like there was an age before that. And it's really just retail industry trade reporting and trade association groups that really haven't made the leap to the modern era of how news is proliferated through social media, and how millennials in particular consume, because they make up the largest portion of the professional workforce in that industry. So connecting with the millennial, I think Morning Brew has really proved that it can be done. You can carve out a new demographic, like you can speak directly to a different kind of a person who wouldn't necessarily subscribe to Retail Dive or eMarketer. Um, and so I think that they're completely unchallenged, and there's more space than I think most people give it credit for, at least in retail industry trade, for more voices. And that's really where I think future commerce can be a voice that's speaking to people that aren't being spoken to yet. The other side is that there's a way of commercializing that business that's not just predicated on free content generation, because we could still do that. We do enterprise ad sales, and we've had a banner year. It's been a great year for business. But if you want to take it further, industry reports, I think, is another area that's ripe for disruption. There's really only two large, well, there's probably more, but two that are like big names in the world of consumer packaged goods that do global, like state of the trade reports for everything that you could possibly think of. You named a few, but like there's everything from like menstrual cups to, the global bread flour, or gluten free
Cricket roast.
mill flour. There's cycling, apparel. Like there's a trade industry report for everything. They charge thousands of dollars a pop. They do PR based marketing, and consumer packaged goods brand like natural deodorant brands will buy them to get a landscape of what, Taiwanese buyers want in their consumer product. And a lot of this research is like hundreds and hundreds of pages. A lot of it's really just like PDF factories. It's taking the same research that you perform in one segment and using that data and insights to inform another. If
Mm,
you could crack that nut, you could build, a multi-million dollar business just on that alone, because more people are looking for more of the same report from a different outlet that might have more editorial rather than here's a bunch of raw data.
mm,
Um, which is something that I think we've really figured out, is how to put editorial to and insights into data.
mm,
Um, so if I'm kind of forecasting where I think the business, like as future commerce might go, that might be it. Because I think the thing I figured out, and maybe you figured this out too, podcasting is kind of a zero sum game. It's like it's a really great
based,
platform on which. Hmm?
advertising based
It can
podcasting or
be, but I
gen
and there's like membership models too, but podcasting is really great for building a mechanism on which to, like, a platform on which to build other things. So
mhm,
it gives you like this really clear recency and frequency model for developing editorialized content. It's really bad for getting active participation if you don't have a voice that's like very personality bound, like a Joe Rogan. So unless you have ultra super fans, people are very passive in the way that they consume your content. And that means they're very passive in the way that they engage you as a brand. And
mm,
it's like pulling people's teeth. Like you can get hundreds and even thousands of people to listen and pay attention. Getting them to do much more than that is pretty difficult.
mm,
And so finding ways to build on top of that is like, well, what else can we do really well? Well, we're good at putting out 2 podcasts a week. We've got Stairway to CEO and Future Commerce. Well, we could probably put out 2 newsletters a week as well, and we can put out 4 research reports a year, and we could put out 3 webinars, and we can do 2 essays a week as well. And the way you scale that up is like you need to figure out how you can. Some of it's content repurposing, but not all of it. And
mm,
but it's the same mechanism that publishes a podcast is the same mechanism that can be used to create all the other stuff.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
sorry, I feel like I'm just chatting your ear off, kind of thinking
No,
out
no,
loud about the.
it's interesting. It's interesting that I always love like brainstorming like directions for
Mm.
business and stuff. But it sounds like you're saying a direction that might make more sense are like these industry reports that are like very like valuable and actionable for brands to pay for to kind of inform their product direction.
Yeah, I think if you look at, yes, because that's a product. It's actually kind of a productized service,
Right.
right? Like the future of that business is developing insights for an industry. And if you can make a product around that, then you can develop other parts of the business that can go deeper. And it creates its own like flywheel effect, in that other content that you create could be valuable and interesting for that. And it's, then you get a little bit of the double entry accounting on on audience building, like Morning Brew did. If we're looking at Morning Brew as validating a business model, if you can sell yourself for $75 million based purely on enterprise ad sales and 20 million in annualized revenue, how many of their subscribers that are on the Morning Brew email also get retail brew and get marketing brew and emerging tech brew as well? Those are also considered audience, and it's the same person across 4 properties. So
Mm,
if you're thinking through that, like that validates a business model that other people like sort of validated an old school approach, but doing it in a new school way, where in a time where people were trying to be like, let's focus only on like subscription solo media operator businesses. I feel like that time doesn't really, like, that won't really scale. Look at any great YouTube channel. Look at like YouTube personalities like Mr. Beast. There's a huge production team behind those. It's the solo media operator is really great for burning yourself out and not much more. So like how do you stay in the business for 8-10 years? Like that's the thing I'm trying to figure out.
mhm,
And that means you need more people doing more things that are really I almost said specialized and realized that would take the wind out of my other argument. So, but are really adept at speaking into one area, like one area of the industry, and have credibility and authority there. And that's why we brought Lee Green on for the Stairway to CEO podcast, is because she's built and sold businesses and she's raised venture, and she's been acquired, she's gone through investment bank, and she's she's gone, and now she's helping other entrepreneurs do that too. She understands the startup hustle and what it means for modern business and modern work. I need more credibility, more people like that who have that kind of street cred to help us figure out what the future of future commerce is going to be, because nobody gets anywhere alone. We do it as a team.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to, like, if I have to develop street cred in every one of these verticals, I'll be 80 by the time I get around to actually doing anything of any value. So,
Right.
um,
What's the Stairway to CEO podcast? What's that one about?
Yeah, Lee Green. So she founded a business called Wear Away, which was an influencer marketing platform and sort of like a talent agency for influencers. It was acquired by a company called Grin. And Grin is like one of the largest influencer marketing platforms in the world. And so she's done the angel and VC thing, and now she herself is an angel, and she's helping other entrepreneurs. Her passion was like understanding for herself, like understanding the things that happen in your younger years and your formative ages that give you sort of the desire to want to be in some kind of leadership.
Mm,
And so she talks to a lot of like uh, mostly the startup CEO types, folks like herself who have been through that journey, and talks a lot about childhood and a
mm,
lot about early career and sort of the dissatisfaction with answering to other people, and this idea that there's something more out there for yourself, to have to, like, the desire or the yearn to build something for yourself so that you're not beholden to anyone.
mhm.
And she explores that in depth. It's sometimes, the pod goes for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and
Nice.
it's a long form interview style show with people who have built something that is, that isn't necessarily squarely centered in the world of retail.
Nice.
And it's a great podcast. It's been running now. I think we're on episode 26. So, and she crushes that show. I mean, she's just a brilliant interviewer, and she knows how to ask the like Howard Stern type questions to get people to open up in a way to that I don't think I could ever do. She gets deep, man. She's like a psychologist. I don't know. She like
That's really cool.
unearths stuff. That's really
That's
great.
really cool. I think founders need a psychologist most of the time.
Every one of them. It's
Something
true.
a little crazy going on. By the
Yeah.
way, congratulations on the acquisition of Something Digital.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a month or 2 ago now, but that's a huge
It's 5 weeks and 6 hours. Not that I'm counting.
17
Um,
minutes.
it's been a wild ride. I've learned a lot. It's actually the second acquisition I've lived through, but the other one was on such a small scale, and in sort of like uh, in a much cleaner way, and I wasn't involved in executive leadership, so I've learned a ton being through this. And if I could rep um, what what the lay of the land is in the Something Digital world. So Something Digital, like, really focused on e-commerce only, and delivering services for e-commerce. And we're about 108 people ish, depending on how you count it. 108 FTEs, based out of New York City, and just kind of like killing it. Like, the last 5 years have been just tremendous growth. And and we just have like the best team. But to kind of extend your reach in the world right now, with as much focus on e-commerce as there is, you really need a bunch of other pieces of the pie to begin, because we've always punched above our weight and we've done some great work and very proud of it. But to find like the unlock to get to the next level is the thing that we were sort of seeking out, and I feel like we really found that. So the it's a bit of a Russian nesting doll um, relationship to the our acquirers. So the company that we are now part of is called Right Point. They're based out of Chicago. Together, Something Digital plus Rightpoint is about 800 people. Rightpoint has 6 offices. One is in the UK, one's in Australia, and so it's a global company, and they do some commerce, but not really. They have a small number of clients in the commerce space, but their customers are, GE and yeah, and big global consumer packaged goods brands. That company, Rightpoint, is their parent company is a company called Genpact, which is a global digital transformation company that does business process optimization, and has 90,000 employees and is traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, wow.
And so Genpact is like our parent company now, and but we'll be falling into we'll be part of the Rightpoint family here in the United States.
Mhm.
And what's crazy is like just understanding that there's a whole world of experience led design and sort of thinking outside the box of, oh, here's Magento and Shopify Plus. It's more about, what is the next level of e-commerce experience that's going to be totally differentiated from anything else that exists in the world. That's what big companies want to do. They want to like completely rethink the way that we do e-commerce. And so as more companies need that kind of thing, they'll need expertise in implementing on certain platforms, and Something Digital brings that capability to Rightpoint.
Nice.
And it's awesome,
Okay.
man.
That's
I've
cool.
never worked for a large company ever.
Yeah,
So this will be a big bit of a new challenge to take on for me.
that's awesome, man. When you talk about, like, that next stage of e-commerce where they're just doing things that are totally new and different, what are some examples? You probably can't get into
Yeah.
too much detail, obviously, or anything like that.
No, you can. I mean, especially now more than ever.
Like, I'm thinking
There's
this, and things like that, and
headless is a new is an yeah, headless is definitely top of mind. Um, in that headless commerce can sort of live anywhere. I think about actually how forward thinking Magento had been in the past, talking about um, every what was I forget how they said it, but it was something like every experience shoppable, and
oh,
like making every experience shoppable, and this idea that there's a commerce centered component to everything in the universe now. And you look at the validation of that. BuzzFeed just launched commerce on its content property. NBC Universal is launching e-commerce that sits alongside its over-the-top video platforms and online video. So, the idea that we may live in a future where you're watching Stranger Things and you can buy the Stranger Things Nike shoes while you're watching it on Netflix with the click of
mhm,
a button is not a far distant reality. It's that the e-commerce platforms of many years ago that are headless capable today will be powering those opportunities. And in that case, you don't need front end development for e-commerce. It becomes an OMS and like order management and catalog and sort of personalization piece, and then it's at a different scale, right? It's at Netflix scale, it's at NBC scale.
mhm,
And so that's where I think commerce is going, and that's experiential, right? It's not, think about the way that we shop online today. It's not the way that you shop online in real life unless you're going to the grocery store. You go to the grocery store, you have a list, and
mhm,
you're going for specific things, and you may buy other things on the way, but you go with a purpose. That's not how you shop at the mall. You go to the mall,
'cause
you're
experience.
walking around and you're taking things in. It's a completely different modality. And so we've not solved for that piece in like the entertainment, shopping as entertainment kind of thing.
Mm,
That's where I think experiential shopping can live. And if you have the right team, and I think that Rightpoint does, just seeing like its past work with Hulu as a streaming platform, and some of the work they've done in other like mobile commerce contexts. I really think that having an experiential design team that
mhm,
can come along with the commerce capability is the thing that will amplify it to the next level. And this is, by the way, not new things. If you There's an interesting Forrester report. I'll kind of leave you with this idea. A Forrester report that just came out that talked about a guy named Ted Shadler, who's like their new commerce services analyst. He just had this huge report that just came out about service orchestration, and talking about like the future of services in commerce is not technology centric or platform centric. That that time is come and gone because platform specialization, technology specialization is kind of a commodity now.
S-
You can go pretty
This
much anywhere in the
was
world to find it.
this is one of the things I want to get into, where you were talking about how strategy is the more
Yeah,
important piece, and the tech implementation has gotten commodified. And
yeah.
I was dying to, like, I miss arguing with you so much about these types of things, but I know we're at our time, so we won't get into it too
But
much.
it's a, no. I just to wrap up the thought, I think that the next wave of services in e-commerce is it happens in two arenas. One is, well, there's strategy. That's part of it. Everybody thinks they're strategic. In reality, most and we've been guilty of it at something digital too, right? You have a hammer, and so everything looks like a nail. And so you sort of cram it into the context of how you think about things because you know how to deliver a certain way.
Yeah,
In reality, in the future, commerce services are probably going to be much more strategic in the application of any technology at all in service of a particular experience. So it's not about what technology is suitable for a particular retailer who's selling in one channel. It's about how do we think about the entirety of a customer journey? How do you provoke incentivize a customer to be multimodal, to shop on the web and then convert on their mobile phone? These require understanding of consumer psychology and understanding how you play the long game with the customer, and less about the technology that you use to get them to, to live rent free in their brains. And that's going to be the real trick for services companies in the future. Is that that's the future of services. The other side of services and how you bill for it, and how you actually like set up structures for having shared success. And so another part of his report was um, value based outcomes. Like if you, it's less about hours and less about delivering on a scope of work and a budget, and way more about the outcome. And value based outcomes is the future of services work in commerce. And it's we can see that as people are spending less in back office, and especially in times of COVID, they're wanting to spend a lot more on the customer experience side. I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of incentivizing of experience design and commerce. There's a lot there to unpack, and I'd love for you to argue more about it. I don't have a ton of time to do it, but
we'll have to find some time to argue again soon. But
yeah,
man, it was so good to catch up, man. I miss talking to you and doing the podcast.
yeah, same here, man.
It was a blast.